Welcome to Women, Men, and Relationships. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's show. Today's episode is about the limiting beliefs about finding and keeping love. And I've got the multi-famous Arielle Ford joining me today, and it's a show that I know that you're going to enjoy. But before we get into introducing her and our conversation, I wanted to remind a lot of you, and some of you who don't even know, that we still do the free 30-day manifestation challenge. And the next one is March 1st. And so you have a few weeks to register. You need to be registered before the 25th of February so that you have time to come into the group on Facebook, watch any of the past videos, and just sort of get your bearings before we start the ground running on March 1st with utilizing some of the free practices that I have as tools for you on this challenge. Now, if you're not on Facebook, you can still do it, but I would ask that at the end of the challenge, you let me know how it went for you, because I don't have the ability to communicate or post or have you check in on a regular basis when you're not with us in the Facebook group. So again, it is free. It is 30 days. The next one is March 1st, and the next one after that won't be till September. So this is it for a while, folks. If you're interested in joining the free 30-day manifestation challenge, go to jjflazanes.com/30day. That's 30DAY, and it's open to anyone who wants to elevate their vibration and frequency, practice positive momentum in the areas of health, relationships, money, life in general, happiness, and everything in between. So jjflazanes.com/30day. So today we have Arielle Ford with us. She is a leading personality in the personal growth and contemporary spiritual movement. For the past 30 years, she has been living, teaching, and promoting consciousness through all forms of media. She's a celebrated love and relationship expert, author, speaker, and is the co-creator and host of the Evolving Wisdom's Art of Love series. Arielle is a gifted writer and the author of 11 books, including the international bestseller, The SOULMATE SECRET, Manifest the Love of Your Life with the Law of Attraction, published in 21 languages and 40 countries, and Turn Your Mate into Your Soulmate. She has also written many groundbreaking books, including Turn Your Mate into Your Soulmate, A Practical Guide to Happily Ever After, and Wabi Sabi Love, The Ancient Art of Finding Perfect Love in Imperfect Relationships. Arielle has been called the Cupid of Consciousness and the Fairy Godmother of Love. She lives in La Jolla, California with her husband and soulmate Brian Hilliard and their feline friends. Visit her at soulmatesecret.com and enjoy today's show. Welcome to the show, Arielle.
Thank you. Nice to talk to you, JJ.
I'm excited because you and I have a lot in common as I was looking over all your stuff, and I definitely been a fan of your work for a long time. And I also really loved finding a blog post that you wrote about the purpose of relationship, and that you have worked or have done work with Harville Hendrix and his work. And I interviewed Harville a couple weeks ago, and he's amazing. I've been a fan of his work, super fan of his work for the last 12, 15 years, and have based a lot of what I do with people on that, and a lot of what I do in my own relationships on that. So I was thrilled to see the connection of law of attraction, imago therapy, and sort of the idea of conscious partnership. So I've heard your story, but my audience hasn't. Do you want to give us a quick overview for my audience who hasn't heard your love story and the work that you're doing in the world?
Yeah, happy to. So one morning, almost 21 years ago, I woke up at the age of 43. I was still lying in my bed. My eyes were closed, and I was feeling around the bed looking for my 25-pound cat. And the cat wasn't there. But as I was feeling around, I noticed how empty the bed was. I had this big expanse of empty bed. And I had this very frightening thought was, oh my God, I forgot to get married. And I was lying there thinking about it, like, what happened? How did I get to be 43? I had this very successful business. I had a great life. I looked great. But nobody in my life. And as I was doing this quick life review, I realized I had been putting all my time and energy and attention on building my business and almost no time on my love life. And I had been studying the law of attraction for many years at that point and using it really successfully in manifesting my business. So I decided, well, would the law of attraction work on manifesting a soulmate? And I had no idea, but I thought I had nothing to lose. And I made a list of, 10 things that I knew I needed to do in order to manifest love. And within 6 months, I met the man of my dreams who exceeded all my expectations. We fell madly in love. We got engaged 3 weeks after we met. And a year later, we had 3 weddings. That's the super short version. But what happened next was really heartbreaking, because as soon as I got married, I quickly discovered that I didn't have any partnership skills. I had never thought about, well, what's it like to be married and how do you create a happy marriage? And I knew nothing, and I was just really on the verge of thinking I'm going to blow this completely. So at that point, I dedicated myself to becoming a student of love, to figure out, what is this thing called marriage? What is partnership? And what does it take to make it really work and be fun and joyful? So over the course of many years, I've now written 11 books. And I teach people how to find love, keep love, and be love. And it's just the greatest job in the world, because I get to spend all my time talking about love.
I love that. And I love love too. And I want to know more about, so give us an example when you said you didn't have any partner relationship skills. How did you know that? What was shown to you? What happened in your relationship that was evidence to that you didn't have any partnership skills?
Well, so what happened was I discovered that really what I was very good at was being the boss. I was used to running my own business. And being the boss, when you're in a relationship with a very healthy alpha male, is not the way to get your needs met. So one day I was standing in front of him. I had my finger pointing in his face and the other hand on my hip, and I was ragging on about something. And I stopped. I noticed what I was doing. And I said to him, I'm really sorry I'm behaving this way. And the next time it happens, and unfortunately there probably will be a next time, could you just kindly, sweetly say to me, oh, when did Sheila enter the room? Now, Sheila is my mother's name, and I love my mother, but she can be really bossy and demanding, as can I. And Brian got it quickly, and he said, yes, and the next time I'm too patronizing, you can call me Wayne, which was his dad's name. So we instantly came up with a way to, stop the potential of World War III by coming up with these code names for calling each other on our behavior. Because I was just used to having things my way all the time and never consulting anybody on anything and just running the show. And that's not a good way to have a happy marriage.
Absolutely. And today's show, we're going to talk about the limited beliefs of finding and keeping love. And I know that you've got your 11 books plus your course, and I know you do some live events. And over these last, it's been 16, 17 years?
We just had our 20th anniversary a few weeks ago.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So over the last 20 years, working with your husband, and now I know this was your first marriage, but it was his second, correct?
Right. Yes.
And
he had a starter marriage.
He had a starter marriage. How long was that starter marriage?
Under 2 years.
Oh, okay. And do you find that there are people, this is my own question, and then we're going to get to some of the limited beliefs of finding and keeping love that you have found with both women and men. But do you find that some people believe that they have to make their marriage work? I mean, there are circumstances where you think a marriage just isn't going to work and it's the wrong match, or if I'm a big believer in Carolyn Mace's work and sacred contracts, that sometimes the contract's over. So for your husband, his 2-year starter marriage, his contract was over and he learned what he needed to learn from that in order to be prepared for you. What do you think about that?
I love Carolyn's work, and I totally agree. We do have sacred contracts with lots of people. And the truth is, sometimes there's an expiration date on a relationship. You came in, you worked out the karma, you did what you agreed to do on the other side, and it's complete. And then other times circumstances arise where there's abuse or addiction or really bad behavior surfaces. So I'm not a believer that you have to stay, just because you took sacred vows means you have to, suffer for the rest of your life. But I am very big in believing that you shouldn't just walk out the door when things get difficult. That there are baby steps that you can take every day to improve your marriage. And if you want to talk a little bit about what some of those are, I'm happy to go there.
Sure. I would want to start with limited beliefs, though, because I'm going through my own transition as well. And I'm the person who's the problem solver who believes in finding a solution to every problem and will do whatever I need to make that happen. And going into my own marriage, knowing that I believe that we had a sacred contract, as I do with everybody, it was a really hard pill to swallow after almost 12 years of being together and almost 10 years of marriage, to get to the point where I've sort of exhausted all possibilities. And what my audience probably knows now, it's only been recently promoted, if you will, is that I've done the exact same thing twice. I attracted my husband with law of attraction the first time. And I also attracted my current partner, who literally is every single thing I've been asking for, that I use the law of attraction to attract. So when I released and succumbed, if you will, to the end of one contract, I mean, 2 hours later, the universe basically said, here's what you've been asking for. And I was like, holy crap. Because I was just assuming that I believed I would get what I wanted, and I did. But I honestly thought the path of least resistance would be my husband. And so I was shocked when it wasn't. But it was one of those, again, confirmations, affirmations, because I also teach law of attraction, that, wow, it worked again. And it worked really great. And wow, maybe that contract was over and I know exactly what that was about, and that it prepared me for this moment. So I'm glad to hear that for you, because I was the person for the last couple of years, at least the first 6 years or last 6 years of my marriage, that tried to find every study, every tool, every way to work on, save, acknowledge, take the cues of the path of that this is something to heal, and did all that. But there's a point where you can't do it for the other person. And I think that's where, so I love to empower people. And I also believe, as you said, that a lot of people give up too soon. A lot of people think that hard means it's not right and don't take the lesson, which is why I was thrilled to have interviewed Harville. And I've done a show on Imago before, because it is our soul contract. There are lessons we have to learn. So I loved hearing what you talked about, that you didn't have any relationship skills. You're 43, you hadn't been married, and wow, I probably need to learn something. So good for you for taking on that soul contract and that imago, if you will, and learning something. And so now, with all your wisdom and knowledge and all the women and men you've helped create a better relationship or find a better relationship, what are those limited beliefs? Let's start with like the biggest limited belief that you think people have that stop them from either finding love or keeping love that they have.
Well, for finding love, and this is mostly true for women, not so much for men. I don't come across a lot of men that are tripped up on finding love through limiting beliefs. But for women, it's one of, I'm too old, I'm too fat, I'm too damaged, or all the good ones are taken, or all of those things. Those seem to be the four I hear most often, and they really believe that to be true. And it's absolutely not true. I mean, right now there are 7.3 billion people alive on the planet, and half of them are single. Okay, so you're literally tripping over potential soulmates every single day. There's something like 53 million singles just in the United States alone. And then the other limiting belief I come across is that, well, I tried online dating and it doesn't work, which is also not true. Right now, 1 in 3 marriages starts online, especially for people over 50. It's just you don't know how to make it work for you. But to say it doesn't work is like saying, well, I'm not going to do one-click shopping on Amazon because I once looked for a product and they didn't have it, so it doesn't work for me. It's the biggest shopping mall in the universe. It's the easiest, fastest way to, have your soulmate wish list and then go hunting for it. And the reason it doesn't work so well for women is because they don't understand that they need to be actively involved. They're sitting at home waiting for the right guy to reach out and look for them, when in fact the women who have the most success online are proactively reading lots of profiles and reaching out themselves.
Are most of the people in your courses and that are fans of yours and do your work are women?
Yes, I generally at my live events get somewhere between 3 and 5 men, and the rest are women. And my online courses are really specifically targeted to women because for the most part, men don't have the same issues looking for somebody. If they complain that they do, they're just not serious and they're not trying. But most women have this, it's the stuff in their head, the voices in their head that really trip them up. I often hear from women, well, there's no spiritual guys out there. There's no conscious men out there. And, part of the problem is what their definition of spirituality is. They really think spirituality means that you're showing up at, Agape Church on Sundays and reading Marianne Williamson books, when in fact for men, they experience spirituality much differently. They may be of service to the community. Maybe they're coaching Little League, or they're volunteering for Big Brothers, or they're doing their hunting, camping, hiking, rafting trips, and they're out in nature connecting with the divine part of nature. So women, the judgmental creatures that we tend to be, don't often recognize what a conscious man is, because that's really what they're seeking. They're seeking a conscious man. And a conscious man is a man who lives his life on purpose, who's somebody who's got a big heart and is going to be good to you and good to your family and good to his community, and, is honest and lives by his word and shows up on time and actually cares about other people. That's what you want in your life. To think you need somebody that you need to sit and meditate with, it's just not true. If you enjoy meditation and it's serving you, great. But to think you need to be with a man who meditates because that means he's spiritual is just BS. I mean, for example, look at Russell Simmons, written lots of books on meditation, multi-millionaire, music impresario, has multiple rape charges against him right now. And yet he meditates and does yoga every day. So you have to really look at the heart traits and qualities that you're seeking, not this fantasy, oh, we're going to meditate together and hold hands in church.
Okay, well, what about the men? I'm curious to rope this into, because I do have a lot of men that listen to the show as well. When it comes to like your husband, for instance, what was his lesson in the first marriage and what was his lesson with your marriage?
Well, from what he's told me about it, that's where he realized that he was, very self-centered. It was all about him. He wasn't sort of what he would call leaning into her, what her needs were, what she was about. And he actually didn't know her very well. He was in his 20s. She had a long history of abuse that he knew nothing about. And, his behavior, he was a wild party animal back in those days. He was constantly triggering her. So it was not a match made in heaven. And by the time we met up, we were both farther along in our lives and more mature. And, he had at that point decided he wanted to leave the business world. He had been a commercial real estate developer and wanted to live a life of service and helping the homeless. And that's what he's been doing all these years. And for me, I never gave any of this stuff much thought. I'm a very much in the moment person. I'm not a planner. I never thought about what does it take to have a great relationship. I just get focused on something. And at 43, I was focused on, it's time to find a soulmate and get married. It never once occurred to me to think about, well, would I be a good partner? And what are the qualities of a good partner? It was really until I saw that I was failing in that department that I decided to study it and turn my life around.
So over the years, besides working with my own issues and again, my husband's issues and the client's issues, I always want to be fair to that. While I agree that women have so many more limiting beliefs based on appearance and based on that, like you said, the beliefs of that everyone's already taken, I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that there are still responsibilities on both sides when you get into relationship. If we're looking at what the purpose of a relationship is, and it's to heal our deepest childhood wounds with each other, and how we pick our partners. I really was drawn to imago therapy for that very reason, that it sort of evened the playing field. It wasn't about going to therapy or saying one person has more to do than the other particularly, or that this gender has more issues. So how do you deal with that with your message to women in terms of letting them know that they have their own stuff to work on? They can only work on their own stuff. But then men also have, there's 50% responsibility on their end too in a relationship.
Well, I think the first thing people need to understand is what love is, okay? Because most people think love is a feeling. They think it's only a feeling. Oh, JJ, I know I love you because I feel it. And, as we know, it's a really delicious chemical cocktail in your brain when you're in love, but it's not reality. And it only lasts 6 months to 3 years and then it's gone. The truth about real adult mature love is that love is a behavior. And love is a choice, and it's a decision, and it's a way of being. And there will be days when you're with your beloved and you hate their guts, and it doesn't mean that you don't love them. So it's really important to understand that, when you make a commitment to somebody else, that you're agreeing to go all in, and you're agreeing to be there on the good days and the bad days. I think once we understand that, then it's important to understand that the whole concept of personal responsibility. Nobody else can make you happy. First you have to understand what you need to be happy, and then when you're with your soulmate, that's the icing on the cake. So for the people are out there, it's like, oh yes, once I find my husband, I'll be happy. Yeah, they'll be happy for 6 months to 3 years until the drugs wear off, and then suddenly they're back to the same issues they had before. So personal responsibility is really critical.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big believer in personal responsibility, or otherwise, victim versus consciousness, right? So you talked about wanting a conscious partner, one who, and that to me is a definition of a conscious partner, someone who understands they're not a victim and takes responsibility for their own happiness. So the question becomes, what if your attraction is to, or you end up marrying, or you're with a partner who has victim consciousness, who does blame, who doesn't understand their own personal power in that way? Because society, and it's a very general paradigm, both in our own family units as we were growing up, as it is in society and on television, that, and still today, that men think that I have to make my wife happy or my woman happy in order for me to be happy. Happy wife, happy life, which we know is, again, part of that victim mentality, and it's not.
It is true that for most men, they can't be happy unless their wife is happy. And there were women out there who are saying, but I tell him every day what I need to be happy and he won't do it. And the problem there is in how they're communicating their needs and their desires. Because as soon as you're whining, begging, complaining, nagging, they stop listening. They can't hear that tone of voice. So it's actually, men are quite easy, and they'll do almost anything for you if you know how to talk to them. And I can give you the fast, easy way to do it.
Sure.
First, you have to ask them for a time to talk. You just have to say, you know what, honey, I've got a little problem that I need your opinion on. Do you have 10 minutes sometime today to talk to me? And he'll say, well, what is it? I want to talk about it now. No, it's not that big a deal. Just let me know when you've got 10 minutes. Okay, so he says, okay, I've got 10 minutes at 4 o'clock. And then you could say, great, do you want to go for a quick walk around the block? Sure. You go for a walk around the block and you say to him, and I'm going to make all this up, honey, I know how much you love me, and I know that you would take a bullet for me. But the other day, you did X, Y, and Z, which made me feel A, B, and C. And then you shut up. You don't say anything more than that. You didn't blame, you didn't shame, you just stated the facts. You did X, Y, and Z, and I felt A, B, and C. And chances are what you're going to instantly get is, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it that way, or what I meant was. And then you finish your walk, and you don't bring up 17 other things. Men can only focus on one thing at a time, handle one item at a time. And it has to be done with from a place of neutrality. You can't do this when you're angry or furious. You don't want to make them defensive. And you do it with a really sweet tone of voice, and you do it from a place in your heart of love and respect. And when you start to talk to somebody that way, you're going to get results. The other thing I would add to that is, if there's something specific you want them to do, you have to tell them why you need them to do it. So, for instance, let's say the husband's job is to take the trash out every Sunday night. And every Sunday night for 3 hours, you end up reminding him, hey, you didn't take the trash out yet. Don't forget to take the trash out. Hey, the trash really needs to go out. And you're tired of having to remind him all the time. Shut up. Stop reminding him. But the next time he does take the trash out, when he walks in the back door, walk over to him, throw your arms around him, give him a big hug, whisper in his ear, I love you so much. You're my hero. Now that you took the trash out, I don't have to go anywhere near that stinky, smelly stuff, and then walk away.
So here's what comes up for me when this story. The first thing, because I think it's all great, except the first thing I'm curious about is when a woman would say, when you did this, I felt this. So I guess we need to go back and define what you consider personal responsibility, because in that scenario, because I use a lot of Marshall Rosenberg's work with nonviolent communication, and I would never say that. I wouldn't say that because I would want to communicate what my feelings are, my needs are, and how to get those needs met. And again, and agreed, like not when you're heated, not when you're mad, not in the argument, but to actually take responsibility for what are my needs? Because when you have a negative feeling, it's only because a need's not being met. So it's not his fault.
Well, let me give you a more specific example, because I don't know Rosenberg's work at all.
Okay.
So let's say last night Brian and I went to a party, and we spent the night talking to Mary and Bob. And in the middle of the conversation, Brian said something that just was really, I felt embarrassed and humiliated, really horrible. I could have ripped him a new one right then and there, but I didn't. I could have, carried on in the car on the way home, but it was after midnight, and I didn't want to start a fight when we were both tired. And when I woke up in the morning, I said to him, hey, I have a problem I need your help with. Can we talk for 10 minutes? And then when we went for the talk, I would say to him, listen, I know how much you love me. I know you would never on purpose do anything to embarrass or humiliate me. But I have to say, last night when we were at the party and you said to Bob and Mary, blah, 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 I really felt, and then I would shut up. So that's just how I would handle it. I'm not trained as a coach or as a therapist. I'm just somebody who's, I've spent 200 hours interviewing Harville and Gottman and all the world's top experts and reading all their books, and then road testing what works for me.
Okay. I totally get that. We each have our sort of our trigger words in life, or things that sort of mean things to us. And so in that scenario, in that example, you was a little bit more, I guess, clear for me. The first one is because I think it's very common for women to say, people get taught, when you did this, I felt this, which can go around and around and around and around with, triggering old wounds that have nothing to do with you. And so I love teaching people how to own their stuff and being able to help have a man contribute to your happiness versus to say, well, it's your job to, because you did this, rather than acknowledging that the wound is already in me and you triggered it. So let me go inside first and figure out what that's about, and then come out and explain it and have you help me with it, versus to say, well, I did this and you did this and I felt this way, and now it must be because you did it. Now I'm asking for you to never do that again, which is dancing around the trigger. Anyway, but I love the example and the advice, because it's totally much.
Well, and the other thing is, it could have been, just a total misinterpretation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, you're right, that was a stupid way to phrase it, because what I really meant was whatever. Right. So it's a way to open the conversation. And I always tell people, listen, if you're in a relationship where things are really ugly and really dark, don't listen to me at all. Go find a professional couples counselor. There's plenty of good ones out there. All I'm trying to do is synthesize a lot of information that most people don't have access to. And I want to give you one example of that because it was something that really changed my life when I learned it. So I was interviewing Dr. John Gottman one day, and he was talking about one of the biggest things that couples don't know is that every single couple, not just some of them, but every couple has a minimum of 9 irreconcilable differences, things on which you will never, ever agree. And that's totally normal. So it could be, one person's on time, the other one's always late. One's a spender, one's a saver. One wants sex 3 times a day, one wants it once a month. There's just a million of these things. And people don't understand how normal that is, that they just, they think it's a reason to get divorced. Oh, we don't agree on anything. And when I spoke to Harville Hendrix about it, I said to him, well, what's the solution to that? And he said it's about coming up with a creative solution, not necessarily compromise, but a creative solution. So I said to him, okay, Harville, well, give me an example of something you and Helen did that was a creative solution to a major problem. And he said that Harville's idea of the perfect day is to get behind the wheel of a vehicle and drive all day long. And Helen's idea of a perfect day is to sit in her living room knitting or doing needlepoint. And if she has to leave the house, she wants to know for how long. And I said, well, that looks like a really impossible situation. And he said, no, it was actually very easy. We bought an RV. I always drive and she's always at home.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great story. He's lovely. And so back to these limiting beliefs of finding and keeping love, because that would be a limiting belief there, that you can't find, if you have a difference, that it's not workable. So I'm sure would you think that would fall under something that you help people with?
Yeah, because it's about really understanding the nature of relationships. I mean, ideally, if you're single, what you really want to look for is choosing wisely. Really understanding what is it your soul is most calling for. What kind of person do you most need to be with? What are the things? What's the shared vision you can have with somebody for what your life looks like? Because you had mentioned, what if you end up with somebody who's got a big victim mentality? Well, this is why it's really important to date for at least a year before deciding if you're going to marry somebody, because you need to get to know somebody. If somebody's got these, really deep, dark wounds, hasn't done any work on themselves, doesn't seem really open to it, and, you're sort of this conscious, aware person, even though it might be the greatest sex you ever had, chances are you're not going to have a happy life with them. So choosing wisely is super, super important. I think the other thing I'd want to say about that is that, as we know through the law of attraction, we attract what we expect. So we have to raise our level of expectation. If you're just thinking, oh, well, my last 3 relationships were all losers, I'm going to try and do better next time, you're not going to do a whole lot better. You have to really up your game. It's like, wow, what am I deserving of? What is my soul most calling for? How much happiness am I willing to have? And then, really put out the welcome mat for that kind of person to come forth into your life.
I used a lot of visualization, journaling, gratitude lists, appreciation lists. What are some of the tools that you recommend people use?
Couple of things. The very first one is creating what I call a soulmate wish list, where you're getting absolute clarity of the heart traits and qualities that you're most seeking in a mate. And then also, as part of that list, pick 3 that are your must-haves, that, without a doubt, you're not going into any marriage without these 3 things, whatever they are for you. And at the same time, know what your deal breakers are, your never again kind of things are, so that you have this intense clarity. Here's one way I like to describe it is, imagine you walk into Starbucks and you go up to the counter and you say to the barista, I'm thirsty. they're just going to look at you like you're crazy, but they'll hand you something to drink, and chances are it won't be what you want. But if you walk in and say, I want a tall, half decaf soy latte with extra foam and 2 stevias, in 3 minutes, you're going to get precisely what you ordered, which is how I view the law of attraction in the universe. If you put in a precise order, the universe can deliver for you. So the first and hardest step is really getting to this clarity. You know, what is it that my soul is calling for? Like for me, before I made my soulmate wish list, I went and did sort of a, what do they call that? A postmortem on my past relationships. And I saw some patterns there. And I saw that the one thing my number one must have would be a man who is generous. Not with his wallet. I didn't need anybody's money. I needed a man who was generous with his love, his time, his affection, his attention, and his appreciation. That's what I most needed. You know, so that was number one on my list and number one on my must-haves. And, you know, the man I manifested exceeded that beyond my wildest expectations.
I'm a big fan of the list as well. I first heard of it from Dr. Sherry Carter Scott back in like 1998 in her book, If Love is a Game, These Are the Rules. I don't know if you ever interviewed her, but I would do
I know Sherry, yeah.
Yeah, I did a list every year, and after I dated somebody, I would adjust it. After I got what I attracted, I'd say, "Oh, I don't like that. Oh, time to move that in the list. Put that in there. Nope, that's not that important anymore." So I think the list is also a very important. I don't think I did.
Yeah, and then the second thing, once you have the list, I would recommend sitting down with a really close friend and going through the list to make sure that you didn't leave off anything important and to take off anything unnecessary. So the question to ask yourself after each item is, does this contribute to my long-term happiness? And if it doesn't, take it off the list. And, you know, for instance, on my list, what I had left off, which was really critical, was that my soulmate must be a cat lover. I've had cats my whole life. I ended up dating guys who were allergic to cats. So if I hadn't had a friend go over the list with me, I would have missed something really important. And then once the list is complete, then what I like to do is release it to the universe. Create a ritual or a ceremony for yourself where you surrender to the list. You give it up. You're not going to be reading it every day, you know, whining and moaning over it. You're just, what I did with my list was I wrote it out on a beautiful piece of stationery. I took it down to the cove where I live on a day of a new moon at noon. I reread my list. I said a prayer of gratitude over it, and then I lit it on fire and I scattered the ashes into the ocean. And then I took myself out to lunch. I ordered a glass of champagne, and in my mind, I toasted my soulmate, and I said to him, you know, I'm now open, ready, willing, and available. The welcome mat is here. Please show up whenever you're ready. And from that day forward, every single day, I would, in my head, talk to my soulmate as if we were already together, as if we were already in a relationship. So on the day that we met on the physical plane, we both recognized each other instantly. And he later told me that he had seen my face in his dreams the night before he met me. So this stuff's really powerful, and it really does work.
That's a beautiful ritual. And I remember hearing that story about that you had recognized each other and that he saw you in his dream. That is amazing. And was Brian, I know that's your husband, was he spiritual then? I know he didn't necessarily use the same practices, but was he on a path that was at all similar?
You know, he was. He learned to do TM when he was 14 years old. And at the time, he learned it because he was a basketball player and somebody had told him it would help his game. And he went on to be a professional athlete. So he didn't do it to be spiritual. He did it for a purpose. But that got him onto a path. And he was from the Portland area. So when Osho was up in Oregon, he used to go to some of his satsangs and stuff. So he over the years has gotten a big interest in consciousness and spiritual things. And we had different paths in that way, but once we came together, we sort of got on the same path.
That's beautiful. Now, in terms of how you help women, I know you've got 11 books and your online course and things. So, where can people find information? What's the best one-stop shop to find out everything that you have?
My website is soulmatesecret.com, soulmatesecret.com, and there's information there. There's also a tab called Free Stuff, and there's lots of free stuff there as well. But I'm pretty easy to find on the web, and I'm also going to be teaching a weekend workshop at Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York in October.
And what is that workshop on?
It's a 3-day Manifest the Love of Your Life workshop, and it's for women.
Perfect. And you had said earlier that when you sort of woke up that day and thought, I have had a successful business, but it's now time to find a partner. Had you been using these same practices for business?
Oh, absolutely. Back in those days, I had a PR firm that mostly did book publicity. And I started it in 1987. And over the years, my clients were Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson, Don Miguel Ruiz, Gary Zukav, Louise Hay. Pretty much everybody in the self-help movement was a client of mine at the beginning of their career. And I didn't know who they were at the time. Nobody knew who they were at the time. But I just kept using the law of attraction to have people who shared my point of view and my worldview show up as clients. And we were talking about sacred contracts earlier. I really believe I had sacred contracts with all of those people. And I closed the business in 2004 because at that point, I really felt like I had completed all the contracts I came in with all the authors and teachers out there, and then started my own career as a teacher.
That's perfect. That's beautiful, the story, because knowing like when it's time. And I think that's a piece that I think was important for me, is knowing when the contract's over, you're sort of at peace with it. It's time for me to move on. I've gotten what I need. I feel complete. Would you agree that's kind of how you felt?
Oh, absolutely. And that was coupled with extreme terror and fear, because generally you don't shut down a business when you're number one in the country at what you do. You're at the height of your success and you have no plan B. But I just woke up one day and I knew it's over. This is done. I'm complete. Do I know what's coming next? No. Is it really scary? Yes. Am I going to live on credit cards for a while? Possibly. But I've done that a couple of times in my life now. And even though it's been really terrifying, it's always been worth it.
Well, and it has proven to work each time. So the resilience that you've had to say, I'm going to do this, look how it works, see the proof. Okay, it worked once, I can do it again. Okay, I'll do it again. So I think that's an important point to make for people, that it wasn't that you hadn't tested out the law of attraction in your life in other ways to begin with. So you just used the same principles and you had a deep belief in yourself and in the process to trust. And I think that's a huge issue too, trust and surrender, that I believe it's going to work out because I have this really strong intuition and feeling that I'm going to trust, like you said, coupled with fear, because when it comes back to, so let's say my marriage, my relationship, there was the same sort of knowing that I'm surrendering right now, but of course a deep fear. And I don't know, is this the right decision? Is this really the end? Is this what needs to happen? But I'm going to just trust that it's all going to work out because I have a calling deeper than I can explain, an intuition that I need to follow. And then of course, 2 hours later, boom, I manifest exactly what I want. So I think it's a great example for people to hear from people like you and from people like me, because they're out there thinking, how can I take this risk, whether it be in love or in money or relationships and in life. So I want to make sure that I'm just pulling in anyone who is wanting to use some of these teachings to further their career as well, because everyone who listens to this show hears everything from health and wellness to law of attraction and spirituality, astrology, numerology, as well as, again, just using these principles in all parts of our life. Because I think it's
and one of the things I want to add to what you said, I totally agree with you, is that there's a paradox to the law of attraction. People say, well, what do you mean you have to just surrender? Aren't you supposed to be in action? And they're not mutually exclusive. So you surrender and you trust that what you've asked for is already yours on the unseen plane. And then you're also taking action every day and following the breadcrumbs and taking the next steps. So it's a twofer. It's not like, and this happens a lot with single women who say to me, well, if it's meant to be, I'll meet somebody. And I always say to them, well, imagine you were a single mother of 3 and you got fired from a job. Would you sit at home on the couch with your hand to your forehead saying, well, if it's meant to be for me to have a job will find me? Of course you would never do that. So understanding this paradox that, on the one hand, we're surrendered and we're trusting, and on the other hand, we're engaged and we're in action. And when you do both of those, you can't help but have magic happen.
That was a great place to cap off today's show. You can't help but have magic happen. And so make sure that you find Arielle on SOULMATESECRET.com, 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 or you can just Google her. And is there any other bit of wisdom, information, something you want us to know about to leave today's show?
I would just want to tell any of the single people who are listening that you need to become visible, that not only do you have the desire for love, but there's somebody or many somebodies out there that are also looking for you. So it's your job to become visible. You need to get off the couch. You need to get online. You need to go to meetups. You need to tell everybody you know that you're open, willing, and available for love, and do something, because you do not have to die alone. I promise you that.
All right. Good advice. Get out there, expand your comfort zone, and be visible. Arielle, thank you so much for your time today. And I really appreciate all the wisdom that you shared. And I know that you've had such success with all the people that have read your books and been in your courses. So I'm encouraging everyone to check out SOULMATESECRET.com. And thank you again for being on the show today.
Thank you. It was lots of fun talking to you.